You know, I never know how to begin things like this. Every time I'm called upon to give some sort of presentation, I always feel compelled to begin it in some sort of grandiose fashion, but I guess until I learn how to crap fireworks, what you see is what you get. Hello, my friends. I'm Chaz the Geek Goth, and there seems to be a phenomena in our subculture where if you were to go up to 100 different goths and ask them each, what is goth, you would most likely get 100 different answers. And presumably the only thing they'd all be able to agree upon is that everyone else was full of shit. That being said, the best definition that I've had the good fortune of coming across is a YouTube video by a one Mr. Nephilim Incorruptus, entitled Goth Definitions and Why Others Are Insufficient. I won't attempt to summarize the video here. It's a video that definitely deserves to be viewed in its entirety, and I'll post a link down below for anyone that's interested. It's a very poignant video. It serves its purpose exceedingly well. And then the obvious question becomes, well, Chaz, if you hold his opinion in such high regard, why then would you, as Mr. Nephilim put it, count yourself amongst every goth and his pet tarantula, making a What is Goth video? I'm glad you asked, Scooter. Your name is Scooter now. The answer is quite simple. You see, if we are to be addressing, again, in the words of Mr. Nephilim, a largely uncaring world, a world that has, time and again, proven that it is indeed quite happy with its own preconceived notions, what do you suppose the chances are that we will be even able to make it to the second bullet point in such an eloquent list before the person that we are addressing goes, "Peace, Lucifer," and bounces? I guess you can kind of see where I'm going with this. The only problem I have with that definition is that it is, in a word, conversationally unwieldy. So, for your consideration, I would like to present a somewhat simplified explanation that perhaps not in as much detail covers the same bases as Nephilim's definition, but might be a little bit easier to get out to those certain people that have already made up their mind. In which case, it begs the question why you're even speaking them in the first place, but sometimes it's unavoidable. And it is simply this. Goth is an artistic movement. Now really consider that for a second. I don't believe it to be overly subjective. I think it covers the major bases that make up the subculture, from our music to our fashion, to books, architecture, movies, what have you. In addition, it further helps us distance ourselves from that ever-present stigmata that we are somehow violent creatures, or that we are all a cult of demon-worshipping cat sacrificers. Grrr. And then, if they still, or you still have their attention, at which point please feel free to extrapolate into the much more defined, in many cases superior definition that Nephilim gave. Another thing I wanted to address is that despite the growing number of goths, I guess myself included now, who try to define what is goth, there is an alarmingly short supply of those who attempt to define what goth is not. Now, of course, there are people who have done so, and if you search YouTube right now, you'll find videos with that exact title. But I'm not necessarily sure we're talking about the same thing. What I mean is directly addressing that sort of, those stigmatas that pop up every once in a while that people seem to have about us. More so in the media than anywhere else, but ignorance at large, I suppose. For instance, goth is not an umbrella term for people who wear dark clothing and dark makeup. Goth is not about getting attention or pissing off mommy and daddy. Goth is not a repository for those who feel dejected or ostracized from society. Now, of course, I'm sure that a number of people have joined the subculture because they felt ostracized or dejected. And I, of course, mean those people absolutely no disrespect whatsoever. But it fails as a blanket statement, as most blanket statements often do. in the case of me, myself, I would say that if anything, I ostracized myself from mainstream society, simply because I didn't want to deal with their bullshit. Okay, I don't give a damn who's winning insert reality show here. I couldn't give a crap what Justin Bieber pissed on this week. And I don't give a flying fuck how Team X is doing in Championship Y. It's just not how I roll. Then, I suppose now we come to the subjective part of the video. What does goth mean to me? Well, of course, I would say that goth is an artistic statement because it is about finding beauty in those places where mainstream society would often overlook it. It is about seeing the world slightly to the left. It's about looking in those dark corners and those shadowed alleys that make normal people turn away in fear or disgust. And yet we look upon it and see what's truly there. Or, at least in our perhaps skewed opinion, and by which I mean a normal person sees death and sees a tragedy. A goth sees quiet repose. A normal person sees a cemetery and sees a place of mourning, whereas a goth might see a place of solace and contemplation. I suppose there's nothing else to say at this point. I'll see you when I see you. Stay batty.